Hey, welcome. Wait a minute and try again. Why did I get an error? I'm
It says
live now.
live.
All right, here we go. Hey, welcome to the Energy Question. Excuse me, with David Blackmon. I'm your host, David Blackmon. With me today is one of my favorite people on LinkedIn who calls himself a free expression enthusiast. He's a global energy project manager. Tom Kirkman, how you doing today, Tom?
Good. Nice to be on your show. I was just in a podcast group, Energy Rallies podcast with your team
Yeah,
last week, and that was fun.
last
So
week.
today, this is definitely going to be an unserious, well, we'll see, unserious podcast because it's, we're going to be talking about energy absurdities. So I'll let you lead in with what you think is some of the stupidest stuff that's been written this week about energy.
Oh, well, oh my God, there's so much. But let's, before we do that, just take a couple of minutes to give folks the 2 minute summary of your background in energy.
I grew up on a farm, been all over the United States before I moved overseas. I was in Asia for 20 years. I've got more than 20 years in oil and gas and energy. I've expanded to different types. I've actually done a couple solar power projects. So I know what's going on with that. I've been all over the world for oil and gas. My last passport, I had to have pages added in because I ran out of space for immigration jobs. So that shows how much I travel. So I'm used to being on the road right now. Just waiting. I have some things in the back burner and we'll see what's going on. And I have fun writing on LinkedIn, both the serious posts and the non-serious posts. And for those who are unfamiliar with reading what I call my weekend science posts, which are basically absurdist, surreal nonsense, which is it's nonsense. But usually the underlying theme is I'm trying to provoke some critical thinking skills in the readers because I go back and forth randomly between my serious posts about oil and gas and energy and just totally random, silly stuff presented in a totally deadpan, serious manner. And I did one about flat Earth. I think you've shown that, and electric cows and time traveling ducks and all sorts of stuff. I don't know. I just sit down, have a cup of coffee and just start writing. So it's fun for me, and the conversations in the comments are just wonderful. So you've read them and you've commented on my stuff. So you are more knowledgeable about oil and gas than I am, but I've been doing
I'm
this
not
for a long
sure of
time.
that. I'm not sure I'm more knowledgeable. I wouldn't say that. I think I know more probably about certain aspects of it, and you know more about certain aspects of it, because of basically our professional backgrounds. You're totally, I think, an expert on oil and gas and what's happening in the energy space. And I was going to share a couple of examples of your memes, but when Stu Turley logged off a minute ago, apparently he took the slides with him. So
Okay.
unfortunately, I don't have those available. But one really good one you posted recently had to do, I think, with Antonio Guterres' latest bombastic, idiotic rhetoric, calling the oil companies the godfathers of climate chaos, and it just basically detailed the progression of how his rhetoric has continued to ramp up over the last couple of years. Why do you think Antonio Guterres does that? I mean, what do you think his goal is with the
He's a
constant
paid
rising?
He's a paid puppet of the globalist / World Economic Forum. So he's
Yeah,
just like a trained SEAL. He says what he's supposed to say. So he's got no actual expertise. I don't know why he is in charge of the UN. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. He's
I
got
know.
no qualifications. You know this. And why is he
Well, he
talking
made his
about energy?
fortune investing in coal and oil and gas, right? That's how he made his fortune, anyway.
So yeah, the progression real quickly off the top of my head, what I put in my meme was it started off as global cooling back in the 70s, then it changed to global warming, then it changed to climate change because there's both cooling and warming, and then climate catastrophe, and then climate boiling, and now we're in climate hell. So I'm
Climate
just
hell.
wondering what is the next progression going to be? And I came up with two here and I actually wrote them down. What other doomsday climate hyperbole adjectives that can they come up with? So I got two here for you. One is climate genocide, and the other one is climate extinction. I honestly, they're gonna have to go someplace else after climate hell, and it's like, how do you get
Well,
worse
yeah.
than climate hell?
Yeah, and he already used the term climate suicide pact.
Yep.
which I thought, imagine if Donald Trump, I mean, remember the case of the vapors that the media got when Trump's, said, what did he say? It was going to be a bloodbath in the
Oh,
EV
yep, for
industry if
cars,
Biden's
EV cars.
reelected. Imagine how the media would react if Trump said something like Biden's climate policies are a collective suicide pact. I mean, it would be a complete meltdown. But when this guy says it, nobody pays attention, which I guess is good news because literally nobody pays attention to him, right? Other than the WEF, I guess.
Well, they have WEF and the globalists seem to have a much bigger head than what they actually are, just because they've managed to control so much of the narrative in the media. But the thing is, the pushback is starting. But there's been years and years of people putting up with this crap, and you're seeing with the elections going on in the EU, people are pushing it back against these policies, which are insanely expensive, that are killing economies, and they're not having the intended result. So all that's happening is energy grids are becoming more destabilized. Energy is becoming less reliable. Energy is becoming incredibly more expensive. And because energy is becoming more expensive, that has a knockdown effect on everything. Food,
Right.
planting food, harvesting food, shipping food, making clothes. Everything revolves around energy. Even businesses that you wouldn't think about, software companies, they got to run the air conditioning, they got to run the lights, they got to run the AI data centers, which we've gotten into before. So AI data centers, just that alone could totally destroy this net zero insane movement. One, net zero is not possible. And two, the amount of additional energy required, which is going to grow likely at an exponential rate in the next few years, won't happen. Copper shortages, Arinda's spoken about that before.
Oh, yeah.
That's looming, and there's no way around this. But all these dreams are up there of, we're going to electrify everything, and we're going to. I posted yesterday a post on LinkedIn about. I said, natural gas is not pollution; it is a natural energy source, and LinkedIn promptly removed it for misinformation. So I appealed it early this morning, and they rescinded the deletion of the post. But there's so many people out there that actually believe natural gas is a pollution. Biden has stated it in writing that something like natural gas is one of the worst pollutants in the world. Right. And it's like, it's a natural gas, just like carbon dioxide.
Well, like carbon dioxide. I mean, how do you classify carbon dioxide? Is the fundamental foundation for all life on planet Earth. Okay, and yet our Supreme Court 15, 17 years ago ruled the EPA can regulate it as a pollutant. That is the most insane decision, public policy decision, I think our country has ever made. And it's enabled everything that's happened since then.
Carbon dioxide and oxygen are the yin and yang of life. So plants need carbon dioxide to breathe. And we've got historically low levels of carbon dioxide, by the way. And people and animals need oxygen to breathe. So when people and animals exhale breath, out comes CO2, some of it, and that CO2 is absorbed by trees and plants and plankton, and they have photosynthesis, and it comes back out as oxygen. So there's this rotating cycle. So one, how do you regulate carbon dioxide? One, it's a trace gas, 0.04% of the atmosphere, and it's like, we need more carbon dioxide, which upsets so many people. But greenhouses, they have carbon dioxide generators so the plants grow better. Why? Because there's not enough carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as it is right now. So,
and how do you regulate it? Because 99.999% of it is created by natural sources, right? I mean, how are we supposed to regulate the natural sources, volcanoes and whatever else?
Plankton and water, swamps, volcanoes, all emit carbon dioxide. How are you going to regulate that? So I joke a lot about volcano taxes. Oh no, volcano's going to destroy the world. Quick, let's come up with a volcano tax. The world will be saved. It's like, that's how ridiculous it gets. So I poke fun at this stuff because I don't know what else to do. When you have a serious discussion about this, all that happens is it gets censored. It doesn't matter whether the science is correct. I remain adamant. Natural gas is not pollution. It's a natural gas that you can burn it to create energy. Well, not create energy, but you can use it for energy sources and heating and making electricity and all this stuff. It's not pollution.
No, it's not. But you and I both use LinkedIn a lot. and we were talking about this before we came live. We both focus a lot on LinkedIn because it is, I think we have to first admit that is the least censoring of all the social media platforms. Even Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, still censors people an awful lot. Their algorithm is idiotic.
Yeah.
Well, LinkedIn has its own algorithm, and you get censored a ton. Like David Ramsden Wood got run off of LinkedIn finally. He finally quit fighting them. You're in the same boat as David was in a couple of years ago with it's not just the algorithm at LinkedIn, right? It's actual physical active censorship of what you're writing over there.
And it's only a handful of people. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm currently standing at 7 million views of my posts on LinkedIn in the last 365 days. Which is nothing to sneeze at. But I also know it's higher than that because about a couple months ago, when I was stuck at 6.8 million views in the last 365 days, one day there was a glitch where it suddenly went up to 8.2 million views in the last 365 days. And then the very next day, it went back down to 6.8 million. And I've seen the LinkedIn statistics sheet, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet, and I can compare. And what's happening is LinkedIn is retroactively reducing the view counts of my older posts. Usually it doesn't start until about a month after I post it. And then consistently, every single post, the view count is reduced. So it doesn't matter. I write for fun. So I have fun when people comment on my serious posts about oil and gas and energy and climate. But I have the most fun. I mean, what I really like on LinkedIn is my silly posts where people just dive in, and I'm writing totally absurd, surrealistic stuff to make people laugh. And then they dive in because by now they know the game. So it becomes a game of who can write the silliest stuff to make other people laugh. And it's just, it's very, very rare that people can actually stump me. It's like, I'm sorry, you win. I can't top your silliness. So people need to laugh at the silly stuff. So I go back and forth between the two. And again, the writing the silly stuff in a deadpan way is to promote critical thinking. AI does not have critical thinking. So one of the screenshots I took was, a reader took it for me. So I asked something about electric cows, and I think I had a picture of a cow with a electric plug in it. And LinkedIn AI prompt put at the bottom of my picture to the readers, how do electric cows benefit consumers? Think about that. AI is asking the readers, how do electric cows benefit consumers? It was totally serious because, once again, it doesn't understand sarcasm or absurdity or surrealism. Okay, we're just going to fly with this. Electric cows. Okay, great. Let's talk about electric cows. It's like I keep poking fun of, I'm trying to feed disinformation to the AI, but I'm doing it in a funny way, trying to do it. And then I go back and forth to my totally serious posts, which is what I like to do. And it probably confuses some people. So, and I love it when engineers come on, like on some of the flat earth posts. They're trying to convince me the earth is not really flat. And it's like, okay, here we go. Let's have fun with this guy.
So AI is so weird to me because when I've tried to use it, just to see how it works, ChatGPT, I think, was the one I tested out. What it amounts to, I mean, is an advanced Google search, and it summarizes the results of an advanced Google search. Okay,
and it's garbage in, garbage out, and it's primarily biased heavily toward leftist viewpoints. So I have no use for it. See, Excel is a software tool I can use. I like it. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. There's no real bias in it. You put in good information and you can ask it to do all sorts of things and manipulate the data and show what's going on and come up with graphs and all this sort of stuff. AI sucks up data from the internet, from Facebook and Twitter and all this other stuff, of all this nonsense, including the type of stuff that I write about electric cows and time traveling ducks. I can't wait for AI and LinkedIn to ask, what are the consumer benefits for electric time traveling ducks? I'm just waiting for them to see if they'll actually post that question.
Right. Yeah. I actually like Grok, the Twitter/X's tool, because part of my morning process has always been to get on Twitter and just browse around and see what's happening before I start writing, right? And I use it as a research tool. Well, you can go to Grok and enter in a topic. And that's exactly what Grok does, is it just researches for me. So it's been useful to me that way. But again, all it is an advanced search of Twitter. Whereas, Chat GPT is an advanced search of Google. And so that's not intelligence. It's machine learning to some extent, I guess, but it's really not intelligence in the real sense of the word.
I haven't tried it. I actually have a account on Twitter, which I have not even tried using for 2 months. It's called True Science Facts. True, TROO Science Facts, FAX.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to find it. Yeah.
But I haven't posted anything because I've been flagged repeatedly as a bot, and X, Twitter, keeps telling me that only my connections, and I've only got like a dozen connections, only my connections can see my posts because I am flagged as a bot. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to run this uphill battle. It's just, why? I'll put all this energy into writing stuff where a dozen people are going to see it. No, thank you.
Yeah. It's just such a pain in the butt. I do like LinkedIn though, despite it all. But it's really got a lot of drawbacks. Patrick Devine had a good comment. He filed this about 10 minutes ago. I'm just getting to it. Saw yesterday that companies will have to spend billions to replace failing wind farm turbines. Yeah, and those were from a specific company, right? Weren't they Siemens turbines, I think? They had some kind, the details on that?
So, a little bit. Siemens is losing money on their wind turbine division. So they're losing massive amounts of money. And they're one of the biggest providers of turbines for wind energy, and more specifically for offshore wind. So my view on energy is, we were talking about this before the show started. It's like, in the history of the civilized world, we have never reduced the amount of energy that we use of any source, except for those 2 crazy years in COVID where everything just sort of shut down and businesses weren't open. But we are burning more wood than we were in the Middle Ages. Why? Because there's more people in the world right now. But you look at it, wood, wind, solar, hydro, oil, gas, coal, nuclear, we're using more of all of these types of energy every year. And it has been throughout the history of the civilized world. We just keep using more and more and more energy because we keep getting more and more and more people. And probably the only way that will ever reduce is if the population of the world declines, which is supposed to start doing within about 1 or 2 decades. There's going to be a huge reduction in population naturally because people are having less kids. But apart from that, we need more types of all kinds of energy. Don't care what it is. So if the world wants to do this massive experiment of installing all sorts of huge electric solar projects and huge onshore and offshore wind farms and more hydro and burn more wood, good. Let's let market forces take its toll and see which energy types will come out the winner. It's an experiment. I have my own ideas of what will happen. I'm sure you do too, but it's like, I'm not here to tell anyone. My sister in Florida, she's got solar panels on her rooftop, and I think that's a wonderful solution.
Sure.
For individual users, like, why not? When I was in Malaysia, the new houses all had to have solar panels to heat the water for your showers. I think that's a good idea. So there's good and bad uses for any form of energy. There is no such thing as clean energy. That's a misnomer. Just like there is no such thing as fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, that was coined by Rockefeller back over a century ago to make it sound like oil was scarce so he could jack up the price. And it was successful, and it stuck all these years. So green energy, there's no such thing as green energy because of the amount of mining and chemicals and processing of toxic things like lithium and all sorts of stuff that go into both solar panels and wind turbine blades and all that fun stuff, and a large amounts of concrete which are used for wind farms as well as offshore oil platforms. I know the amount of steel that's used to make offshore oil platforms. It's a lot. There is no such thing as clean or environmentally friendly energy. I think the closest I can think to possibly would be hydro, but that also has devastating effects around the dam when you block it off. Sure. It floods huge amounts and it kills off the vegetation. People have to move. So there's no such thing as clean / renewable energy. So even the solar panels and the wind turbines need to be replaced every 15 or 20 years, just like
Well,
oil
of
and
course,
gas
they're being
platforms. You need to keep drilling new ones.
right.
So there's no such thing as any form of renewable energy. They've simply come up with the term renewable energy. They just invented whole cloth. It's just sort of like they did for, oh, this is a touchy topic here, vaccines, where they relabeled mRNA and is calling it a
Not a
vaccine when
vaccine
it's
at
not.
all.
It was
It's
genetic
yeah,
experiment. They just changed
right.
what the definition is. So there's no such thing as clean energy or green energy or renewable energy, and I'm very adamant about that.
Tom Mumford has an interesting comment. It doesn't seem like population will be reduced. I believe it would only be a reduction in growth. The West is having less children, but the reduction doesn't seem to compensate for the growth of the population in third world countries, especially when China is allowing more than one. Yeah, I think that's a solid point. I at some point you would expect. I mean, Japan has reached the point where they're not replacing population, and you would expect that the developing countries in the global South will also reach that point sometime in the future. But I don't think anybody really has any idea when that will be. None of it is going
Take
to be satisfactory to the Malthusians, though, in the climate alarm community.
take a look at the amount of the surge of excess deaths in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And that amount of excess deaths continues to grow. It is not reducing. It is increasing year on year for the last 3 years. So if this trend continues, people will start dying much earlier. So they
Yeah.
call it sudden death, and they're scratching their head and they just can't figure out what it is. It must be climate
Gosh,
change.
what
So
changed in
the
2021?
sun, being in the sun gives you a heart attack. Eating eggs gives you a heart attack. Eating beef gives you a heart attack. Sudden death. And it's like, oh man, okay. So I'm not going to get into that whole thing, but it's like my
I
point
don't mind
here,
getting
look at
into
the
it.
actual numbers of increased excess deaths based on, there's Excel spreadsheets that, funeral directors use to track how many people die every year. And there's just been an increase starting around 2021. And that
Yeah,
increase continues to grow mostly in Western countries. I'll let you guess what that correlates to.
right.
I don't want
Yeah.
to get into the topic because it'll just upset somebody.
I know. Yeah, shit. We're probably already canceled on YouTube for this, but I don't care. I'm so sick of these algorithms and all the bullshit you have to do to conform yourself to them. And sorry about my language, folks, but that's a real irritant. So let's talk about the grid. We're going into summer. We're probably going to have blackouts. I think the northeastern grid is really vulnerable. Texas is vulnerable. California is always vulnerable. ERCOT says we have a 16% chance. How they arrived at 16%, I guess, is a computer modeling thing, of having to resort to rolling blackouts during the high heat days in from late July through mid September. Um, what's caused that? Why are we having reliability problems in Texas, which is home to the biggest reserves of natural gas on planet Earth?
Well, oh boy, I'm going to get in trouble no matter what I say here. So let me try and keep this as trouble-free as possible. One, I've spoken with Irina Slav about this on numerous occasions. And one, if this summer is hot or there's peak days, I expect there's going to be rolling power blackouts. And it's like, you know what? Let's do it and get it over with. This is the only way people will learn. So I joke around about, Darwin Awards. So I told my sister, she was just up here visiting from Florida, said, you know what? Because she was talking about some people doing stupid things, and she was showing me videos, funny YouTube videos of people just doing incredibly stupid things, dangerous things, and getting hurt. And I said, you know what? We've gotten too careful. We need more Darwin Awards. We just need the really, really stupid people to just get the reward of doing stupid, stupid stuff. So Texas, I don't know why Texas insists on messing up their electric grid, but Texas is bound and determined that they're just going to keep going down
Yeah.
this path and doubling down. And what's going to happen is there's going to be rolling power blackouts. And I would much prefer it happens during the summertime than during the wintertime, because cold weather kills far more people than hot weather. You read in the media, oh, the hot weather caused deaths. Yeah, well, cold weather causes 10 times or more deaths than hot weather. Not having air conditioning sucks. Freezing to death, that sucks a whole lot worse. So
Yeah.
One point about ERCOT and the Texas power grid, please don't interconnect with the rest of the United States. Don't come under the thumb, the oppressive thumb of the federal government regulations, which would take over, ERCOT's regulation and independence. The federal
The
energy
funny thing is,
guidelines
though, it's
make no sense.
ERCOT and the PUC both are promoting the idea of interconnecting to the rest of the grid. And I don't understand it, because you're right. I mean, it will heavily diminish their own authority. It's weird.
Well, if something bad happens this summer, it's like, well, we're kind of long overdue for it, because we keep getting warnings that the electric grid is so strained. So now what's happening in California and, New England and all this stuff, they're trying to ban natural gas stoves and natural gas heaters and all this other fun stuff, and electrify everything, and pushing electric vehicles. And our electric grid is so strained already. Why are you doing this? You can't shut down reliable sources of energy before you've got additional reliable sources of energy to replace it. I brought up the point earlier of every year, the world continues to use more amounts of every single type of energy, more and more and more and more, year after year after year. So this constant push to reduce energy from oil and gas and coal without replacing it with another form of energy that is reliable and cheap, you're just asking, you're begging for trouble. And that's what I see happening. And it might come to fruition this summer. And if it comes in crushing, that might have a big effect on the November elections as well.
So where do you see us going with this energy transition? The governments, the globalists have really pushed wind, solar, and electric vehicles as the preferred solutions. It's obvious it's not working out for them. Do you expect them to have a change in direction anytime soon, just in terms of the overarching narrative? And I mean, we've seen Jennifer Granholm, for example, here over the last month, suddenly, all of a sudden, becoming a big pusher of nuclear expansion, right? Which is
They got no
great.
choice.
We need a lot more nuclear.
Energy transition is a BS term coined to push an agenda, in the same way that hydrocarbons was a BS term coined to promote the use of oil.
Fossil fuels.
In the same way that green energy or renewable energy is BS, and that phrase was coined and invented in order to push a certain energy agenda. I keep saying the world continues to need more and more and more energy. So we don't need an energy transition. We need more energy. How difficult of a concept is this to understand? We can't transition to a different kind of energy. When in the overall big picture, we need more of all kinds of energy: hydro, wind, solar, oil, gas, coal, nuclear, biomass. That's a fancy name for wood. We need all of these types of energy, in my opinion. And we can see after a decade which forms of energy are the most efficient, most reliable, cheapest, the ones that will impact people in a positive way. Because the thing is, there's so much poverty in the world, and poverty is mostly caused by lack of cheap, affordable, reliable energy. Once countries have affordable, reliable energy, they are able to lift themselves out of poverty. For example, fertilizer. Fertilizer is being said it's a horrible thing, and it's not.
Yeah, they're trying to regulate
fertilizer allows the world to have 8 billion people. So there is no such thing as the energy transition. It's a made-up BS term, in the same vein as reliable energy, as hydrocarbons. They're not hydrocarbons. I'm sorry, I'm missaying the word hydrocarbons. Fossil fuels. Fossil fuels. I'm sorry. I get to talk sometimes. I get the words mixed up. So fossil fuels is BS, not hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons is actually correct. They're a combination of hydrogen and carbon, and that's what that form of energy is. But they don't come from dinosaurs. I'm sorry, that's just not the way it works. If it is, why is there methane lakes on whatever planet it is? Right. I can't remember which one it is.
Well, it's one of the moons of
Saturn, I think.
I can't remember which one, but yeah. From a government, Patrick Devine says, from a government standpoint, it makes sense to tap ERCOT. They put PVs where the sun shines and then try to transport it to other parts of the country.
Like
Oh, I
California.
see. Yeah, and and from that standpoint, it does make sense. But people are promoting that in Texas as a how from the standpoint it could have avoided the crisis in Uri, Winter Storm Uri, where our whole grid froze up. And people keep saying, well, if we were just interconnected to the national grid, we could have brought power in from all the surrounding states. Well, hell, they were frozen too. I mean, people think they were all frozen just like we were. It makes no difference at all. It makes no sense. Anyway, go ahead.
California, if I recall right, imports about 40% of electricity. I may be wrong. I'm just going off the top of my head. But the amount of energy in California is essentially an energy island. And if you don't know what an energy island is, just do an internet search for it. And California is an energy island, and they import so much oil from tropical South American countries, the Amazon region, which is like some of the most horribly, if you want to talk about bad use of resources, that in some countries, drilling for oil is just massively environmentally damaging because they don't have the rules that the U.S. has, that
Right.
Canada has, that the Western countries have. They don't care about pollution. The government's only interested in making money. So California is going down the wrong road, and that is eventually going to bite them badly. And I'm hoping that actually happens fairly soon as a lesson to the rest of the United States of, hey, California is trying to tell us to, block all natural gas and electrify everything. And guess what? They've just went belly up because they're having rolling power blackouts every day. Yeah. That's what's eventually going to happen. They can only piece it together with Band-Aids and twine string for so long before the whole thing just sort of collapses. And when it does, people will be really, really unhappy about it. So Texas putting in more capacity and for electricity. Capacity is not the same thing as on-demand generation. So there's the types of on-demand generation you can have for baseline energy is basically nuclear, which is probably the most consistent, coal, which is easily storable, natural gas, which is not so easily storable, and oil, which is fairly easily storable.
Rapidly, right? You want natural gas because it can be spun up in a matter of minutes, so just dispatchable.
Well, now the new EPA regulations want to do away with all these, I can't remember the name of them, the ones, natural gas power plants that can generate power on short notice, but most of the time they don't run just because they're too expensive. But in times of high electricity demand and nothing else will do, you can fire these puppies up in a space of minutes and you have instant electricity. That's why they're needed. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of what they're called. They do have a technical name. I'm just spacing it out right now.
What, the natural gas plants?
No. Sorry, I'm just spacing it out.
Anyway, did you see the incredible response the PUC got to the Texas Energy Fund? This new fund that was created. It's a $5 billion fund that offers low interest loans for natural gas capacity. They took in bids at the end of last week. 125 bids for 56 gigawatts of new natural gas were applied.
Way more than they planned or budgeted for.
Incredible.
So we need reliable energy. We need it. Yeah. You can have all sorts of different energy. So, for example, I'm visiting my parents right now in Michigan, and they've got two furnaces. One, they've got a wood burning stove in the basement, and then they also have a propane heater. So they will normally use wood, but when the temperature gets really, really low, they'll fire up that propane heater just as well. So having dual energy uses makes sense in the same way that I'm not opposed to hybrid cars. I think EV cars, battery operated cars, are just silly, but that's just my choice. But I have nothing against hybrid cars. I mean, my car, the engine stops when I come to a stoplight, and it starts back up when I press in the gas pedal. So it's saving energy, especially if you're in a city where you've got these 3-minute, or actually my sister lives in Florida, they've got one stoplight that's 4 minutes long. Yeah. Honestly, that's just insane in St. Petersburg. So I have nothing against hybrid energy, and I don't want to put all my ducks in one pond. I don't want to make all my energy bets on just oil or just natural gas or just coal. We need a variety of energy sources because some energy is better in different situations.
Right.
When you've got a heat spike or an incredibly cold chill, natural gas, short notice, is probably the best thing you can have to add immediate electricity to the grid to keep, the grid from just crashing.
Right.
Peak loads, yes, and Patrick Devine said peak load plants are rapid start plants. Yes, so the EPA has now come out with new regulations, basically trying to regulate these things out of existence. And even New York State said, I'm sorry, we can't do that, because if we do, we will have rolling power blackouts. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. So New York State is pushing back against the EPA, saying, we can't retire these yet. So even these guys that are oh yes, in messy times. Titan has vast methane lakes. Kurt Vonnegut wrote about in The Sirens of Titan. Yes, I actually read that book. Nice book.
Yeah, that's my friend.
I just can't remember what the name of it was. So I promise you, there were no dinosaurs on Titan. There were no plants on Titan. So methane is not a fossil fuel. It is a hydrocarbon. And I apologize again for mixing up the word hydrocarbon with fossil fuels. So I try and push back against the word fossil fuels when people use it to try and correct them. So
Tom Mumford says all sources of energy that are available and the market will determine which works best for which application. Agreed. Yes, sir. That's right.
Strongly agreed. That's the way to do it. And it's like trying to force any particular type of energy on a population is similar to trying to force everyone to buy EVs. It's like, yeah, the market's eventually going to if it's not the right thing. Government intervention is almost always bad.
Now. We see that happening now in the EV market in the United States. Demand's falling off. Ford is going to start making hybrids instead of BEVs. It's just falling apart. Every pure play EV company in the United States is on the verge of bankruptcy, except for Tesla. And that's because Tesla had a 15-year head start. It's not. There was a great, I don't know, you may have seen this. I think it was out on LinkedIn this morning. Somebody posted a meme that talked about, imagine that the world had adopted EVs first, okay? And then somebody comes along and introduces this concept called the internal combustion engine. Imagine what the response would have been to a car that weighs half as much, uses half as much steel, doesn't have a need for all these critical energy minerals. You don't have to worry about it running out of charge. And how would the industry respond to that? Well, the industry would immediately adopt internal combustion engine cars. No question.
Yep, I have seen that meme, and they're correct.
Yeah.
So don't trust the government. This is the lesson I've learned since I was a teenager. I mean, anyone who goes around and trusts that the government is going to do good by them, I want to stay away from them. Let me put it that way, because you clearly have not learned your lesson yet.
Right. Tom Mumford says Tesla will go back to being a niche product, I believe. I think that's right. I mean, I think EVs in general are a niche product, and that's what they're always going to be, because central planning has never been able to overrule the market in a democratic country. And that gets to my last point, which I would like your opinion on. Is this energy transition and all these solutions that are non-solutions that the governments are trying to force on us compatible with the maintenance of a free and democratic society?
No, very simple. No. As I keep saying, once you wrap your mind around the concept that this energy transition is a BS term coined to promote a government agenda, in the same way that fossil fuels was coined, in the same way that renewable energy was coined, because there's no such thing as renewable energy. I'm not even going to get into the laws of physics here. Believe it or not, I do know something about science, even though I poke fun of the science true believers on LinkedIn. No, the government can't change the laws of physics, and EVs will remain a niche product, and those who want them will get them. And it's probably just about tapped out. And what's happening is the market forces are changing. And since EVs can't be shoved down the throats of the entire population, what's happening is hybrids are coming out, which actually makes more sense. So it's a combination of ICE engines with battery powered engines. And I think that's kind of a cool idea, especially for city driving. Pure ice engines are much better for long distance hauling, like
Right.
trucks. Electric industrial trucks, that's insane.
Insane,
No,
completely insane.
that's just
And so it's so costly to everybody. I mean, the thing about all these false solutions is every one of them just increases cost to everyone, and that's a regressive tax on the poor.
and you see the
And
pushback in the EU right now. So the US and Canada will trail behind the EU. So I can imagine similar pushback happening in the elections in November in the United States. And honestly, I can't remember when the elections are in Canada. But
next year.
okay,
I
so
don't. I'm not sure what month next year, but
it's hitting people in their pocketbooks, because all this dreamy rainbow unicorn talk about down in the future we're going to have more energy and it's going to be cheaper, and but it's not happening, and it's costing people really, really heavily in their pocketbooks, because the
oh no, what
cost of
happened?
energy,
Oh, there you are.
the
We
higher the
lost you
cost
for
of
a second.
energy, the higher cost of everything: food, goods, transportation. So we need abundant, reliable energy to function properly as a modern civilization. And we need abundant, reliable energy in countries that are poor, so they can lift themselves out of poverty.
Yeah, yeah. We're getting
My
flooded
opinion.
with more comments and questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Christopher Messina says, great conversation. Thanks, guys. We need to spread rational thought to well-intentioned folks who are hit with absurd propaganda all day long. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you. Question from JT Lawn One, and that's at YouTube. Question: why do climate alarmists say that CO2 stays in the atmosphere for 3,000 years when we know from the nuclear tests in the 60s that CO2 with C14 has a half-life of 20 years or so?
I can answer
Well,
that.
yeah,
They're lying.
they're lying, of course. Just like radiation. I mean, think about it, folks. In the 60s, we were told everywhere an atomic bomb explodes, that area is going to be condemned for thousands of years because the radiation has a half-life of thousands of years. Well, Hiroshima, there are films in Hiroshima, Japan, of the whole society coming back within 2 to 3 years of the atomic detonation there. It was a lie. It's an absolute lie. It's always been a lie. And the whole fear factor around nuclear energy is a complete lie. And we got to get past that at some point. Second law of thermodynamics is a physical law based on universal empirical observation concerning heat and energy interconversions. Yes, sir. Tom Mumford again. Absolutely. Yes, Tom. Don Culpepper Jr., excuse me. Absolutely not, is nothing more than a mechanism to control transfer. Yes, transfer of wealth from one group to another. Yes, the energy transition is the most massive transition of wealth ever conceived by mankind.
And control and reduction of human rights.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all, the whole thing is an exercise trying to drive us to a global authoritarian socialist form of government. I think that's just painfully obvious at this point. And it's hard for anyone, I think, to even argue that point anymore.
The energy transition is a road to socialism and then eventually a road to communism. I mean,
yes.
You think I'm exaggerating, but actually I'm not.
No, you're not exaggerating at all. It's absolutely right. Tom Mumford again, the weight of these vehicles are killers. Yes. Yeah.
Chewing
And
up
in
our
fact,
roads.
and they're destroying our roads. They're tearing up the roads. I mean, people haven't even begun to factor in, McKinsey came out with this cost estimate last year for the global energy transition, around $300 trillion. It doesn't even begin to factor in the cost of having to reinforce and rebuild our entire infrastructure of roads and bridges. That's going to be hundreds of trillions of dollars in additional costs over and above that $300 trillion. And nobody's even thought about quantifying that yet. It's just,
and the shortage of copper will prevent it from happening anyway.
well,
This
that's
is going to be
right.
a serious
Yeah,
problem.
it's not going to happen anyway because of that. I mean, there's just and it's not just copper. There's other mineral limitations that are, it's not possible. None of this is possible. Mihai says C14 is radioactive, C12 isn't. Good point. Tom Mumford, Patrick Devine says Tom Mumford on roads and in park. Yes, the point we just were talking.
Yeah, wait till parking garages start collapsing. That's already happened in New York City.
Yeah. And, and they're not load weighted for these cars, folks. They're just not. And because they didn't have to be, and there was no reason to make them that way.
It's like the weight limits on bridges. If you have a 20-ton, vehicle and the weight load limit is 10 tons, there's only a certain number of times you can cross that bridge before it fails.
Right.
Because there is a safety factor built in, usually 30% or so.
Tom, this has been great. We're going to have to shut her down.
I know.
Because
You got another podcast
here in a minute. But yeah, this has been wonderful. We need to do it again, man.
Cool. I like it. Appreciate
you taking the time. And thanks to everybody who chimed in. This is the most comments and questions we've gotten. So I really appreciate it. And everyone, it's really nice for y'all to pay attention and participate here. I'm glad we have this technology available to us. Thanks to Stu Turley and the Sandstone Group for hosting the podcast. Thanks to our extraordinary producer, Eric Perel. Tom Mumford, God almighty. Tom Kirkman, sorry, man. Yes, thank you, Tom Mumford, too. But Tom Kirkman, appreciate you. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.